learned in the previous session. Okay, so in the previous session, we looked at a more organized way of implementing the page object model, which is basically the page factory design pattern, right? We learned how to implement it for the login page test case scenario, right? And in this particular session, we'll first learn about something called as behavior driven development, or simply put BDD. Okay, and then we'll look at a new framework called as Cucumber. Basically, it's also a tool, and we'll also look at the language needed for using this particular thing called as Cucumber, and the language is called as Gherkin. Okay, explored a lot about Selenium. We have explored a lot about the TestNG framework, the page object model, and so on and so forth. Right? We created test cases, we generated reports, we also created page objects, etc., for testing our web application altogether. Right? So now, as with any kind of technology, for example, let's say if you take Selenium with TestNG and Java, though it is a powerful combination for automation testing, just like as with any kind of technology, this combination also has its own set of challenges, right? For example, limited collaboration, technical complexity, and so on and so forth, right? For example, in the software development process, it's not just to the software developers or just to the testers altogether. There are various other scenarios where non-technical stakeholders, they could be business analysts, product owners, or sometimes even clients might come into the picture, right? So they might need to understand the tests that we are doing, or they might want to understand the features that we are building, and so on and so forth, right? Similarly, we need to make sure that these tests are properly reviewed and the progress of a particular feature or an application is properly understood by everyone that is involved, right? So for the business analyst to take business decisions and for the technical people to understand the technical aspects of it, it needs to be understood by everybody, right? Also, all the non-tech people like the business analysts, product owners, etc., they should also be able to review the test so that they would be able to ensure that whatever software development we are doing, it's in alignment with the system requirements and the company's requirements as well, right? That is a very important aspect. Also, when we are writing tests using Java, there is a chance that we might need an understanding of complex programming concepts as well, right? So this can be a barrier for those people who are totally new to programming, or if they are non-technical stakeholders that are involved in the project. Okay, so it has its own set of limitations, is what we need to understand. Now, the fundamental question is, how can we solve this kind of an issue, or how can we bypass this kind of a challenge, right? So the answer for that is behavior driven development, or BDD. Okay, we'll try to understand what exactly it means. So BDD, or behavior driven development, is basically a software development approach that focuses on or emphasizes the collaboration between developers, testers, and business stakeholders as well. So it basically makes sure that everybody understands everything. Okay, right. So it focuses on defining the behavior of the software application in a way that is understandable by all the stakeholders, right? You can think of it like this: BDD, or the behavior driven development, is like writing a script for a movie, right? So just like a movie script describes what each character will do, as in what is their behavior, what is their character, what are the actions that they're going to do and all. In BDD, we describe what a software or an application or a feature should do. Okay, so we write this particular script in a way that everybody, even the people who don't know how to code, everybody is able to understand it, right? So simply put, in BDD, the tests that we write are written in a language that is understandable to both the technical and the non-technical audience as well, right? That is, they're written in plain descriptive English type grammar, right? So plain English type grammar. They are explained as a behavior of an application, and they are more user focused. Okay, so behavior driven development, we write the description of the behavior of this particular application. Okay, right. Coming to the advantages that we have with BDD, firstly, there's a fundamental shift from a test-driven thinking process to a behavior-driven approach altogether, right? Moreover, collaboration between business stakeholders, business analysts, QA team, developers, etc., everybody is easily able to collaborate altogether with the help of behavior-driven development approach, right? Moving on, as we discussed, the test scenario should be written in a plain language with a detailed description of the test, how we can test the application, what is the application behavior, and we need to make sure that everything that we write is understandable by everybody, even the non-technical audience as well, right? And to be able to implement the BDD, we need to have, there are a huge number of tools available in the market, right? There's Cucumber, there's SpecFlow, Lettuce, and so on and so forth. Okay, and for the scope of our course, we'll be focusing primarily on the Cucumber tool. Okay, right. So let's get started on how exactly, or what exactly is Cucumber and how we can use it all together, right? So Cucumber can be thought of as a tool that supports the BDD approach. It kind of acts like a bridge between the software engineer and the non-tech stakeholders altogether, right? So it allows us to write and describe software behavior without needing to know the details on how that functionality is implemented. Okay, so we just need to write the software behavior without actually looking at how exactly the functionality is implemented. Okay, so in simple terms, it enables the creation of human readable scenarios, and we can automate the execution of those scenarios to validate the software's behavior altogether. Okay, so it uses a language called as Gherkin. Okay, so to write these specifications and tests, we use a language called as Gherkin, and the tests are first written in a simple scenario form that describes the expected behavior of the system. Okay, and that too, most importantly, the description is from the user's perspective. perspective, end user perspective. Okay, so we'll try to go deeper and try to understand better as we go forward, right? So coming to Gherkin, it's a simple structured language which is used in BDD so that we can write human readable descriptions of software behaviors, right? Basically, it's used to describe the behavior of a software application in a way that is understandable by non-technical stakeholders as well, right? Anybody can understand it altogether. And it is used in combination or conjunction with Cucumber to define the acceptance criteria and define the scenarios for a software feature altogether, right? And if you remember, acceptance criteria basically focuses on checking if a system or an application that we have designed, is it meeting the specified requirements and is it suitable for delivery to the end users or not. Okay, right. So Gherkin syntax, basically it uses a set of keywords and it also uses something called as a given, when, then format to describe the software scenarios. Okay, so it has a particular set of keywords and there's also something called as a given, when, then format. We'll look at that as we go forward. Okay, so these kind of scenarios, the scenarios that are described using these keywords, they will basically outline how the application should behave in response to a particular user action or in response to a particular event. Okay, as in these scenarios will define, let's say if I click on a login button, what should happen? Let's say if I click on the search button, what should happen? If I enter something, what should happen, and so on and so forth, right? So basically we are talking about the behavioral scenarios altogether from the end user perspective. Okay, so let's take a look at these keywords. Let's try to understand a brief overview of them, right? So the first one is feature, right? Basically a feature represents a high level functionality or the aspect of software that is being described. Okay, it basically provides the context for the scenarios within the feature file. Okay, a scenario represents a specific use case or behavior of an application or the feature. Okay, it describes a sequence of steps and the expected outcomes as well, right? So the given steps, so now this is where it gets interesting, right? So we have the given, when, then, and but. We have 5 keywords over here, right? The given step or the given keyword sets up the initial context or the preconditions for the scenario, right? The entire purpose of this given step is to establish a starting point for the scenario, right? And then comes the when keyword. The when step or when keyword defines the action or event that triggers the behavior being tested. Okay, it describes the user interaction or system action that is being performed as part of the scenario, right? The when step is where the actual behavior under test takes place. Okay, and the then step defines. So after when, we have the then word. Okay, so the then keyword defines the expected outcome or the result of a scenario, right? It specifies what should happen as a result of the action taken in the when step. Okay, and it basically helps us validate the behavior of the software, whether it is as expected or not, right? And to combine the when and then keywords, we use and but keywords. Okay, so in addition to the core given, when, then framework or given, when, then keywords, we can use and but to add more steps and add more details to the scenario. Okay, so these keywords, they help us maintain the entire flow and the readability of the scenario altogether. Okay, so on the whole, what you need to understand right now is using the given, when, then format, scenarios can be written in a structured and a consistent manner. Okay, it makes it easy for us to understand the sequence of actions and the expected outcomes as well. Okay, so these scenarios serve as executable specifications that can be used for both documentation purposes and automated testing using BDD tools like Cucumber. Okay, right. So we'll take an example. We'll try to understand what exactly these are, how exactly these can be implemented, and so on and so forth. Right. So we have understood 5 fundamental or a few fundamental keywords altogether. We have seen feature, scenario, given, when, then, and but, right? So there are 7 keywords altogether. Let's take a look at how exactly they work. Okay, remember, when you're working with BDD or behavior driven development, all the things that we write are primarily from the user perspective. Okay, for example, as you can see over here, the feature that we are testing is the login functionality. So we wrote feature colon login functionality. Okay, and under that we wrote a small description, right? So from the user perspective, remember, every time you think about behavior driven development, you're talking about the behavior of the application from the end user perspective. Okay, so the set of lines that you see below the feature part, before the scenario part, this is called as user story. Okay, we'll learn about it as we go forward. So basically what does it say is the expected scenario is pretty straightforward over here, right? It provides a high level description of the end goal of this particular feature. Okay, so what is the end goal of login functionality? We should be able to log in into the application and we should be able to access any kind of features altogether, right? So we want the users to be able to log in into their accounts on the e-commerce website, and we also are explaining why this functionality is important. Why do we need it? We need to access personalized features, we need to be able to make purchases, and so on and so forth, right? So in the Gherkin language, we'll write it as a user of the e-commerce website, I want to be able to log in into my account, okay, so that I can access personalized features and make purchases. Okay, so think of it like this. So you are a user, you want to use the login functionality. So what do you want? As a user of the e-commerce website, I want to be able to log in into my account, right? So which is a valid point. So so that I can access personalized features and make purchases altogether. So this is the user story. This is the purpose for which this particular feature is written. Okay, and obviously to test the login functionality, there will be 2 scenarios, right? The successful login and unsuccessful login scenario. We have already worked with them programmatically earlier using TestNG and other approaches altogether, right? So these are basically like the test cases that we used to write. Okay, for example, in the successful login case, what exactly we have written is we write given I am on the login page. So given, what does it do? It basically sets sets the preconditions for the execution of the test case, right? So here it is assuming that I am already on the login page, right? Given I am on the login page, when I enter a valid username and a valid password and I click on the login button, we are defining two actions over here, right? So given that I am already on the login page, when I enter a valid username and a password and I click on the login button, then so we are basically setting the scenario. We are executing two actions. The first action is to enter a valid username and password. The second action combined with using end is basically clicking on the login button. When these two actions are performed, then I should be redirected to the home page. Successful login case, right? So as you can see, the scenario is a successful login case, and given I'm on the login page, when I enter a valid username and password and I click on the login button, then I should be redirected to the home page is what it is saying, right? So this is one scenario. Similarly, for the unsuccessful login scenario, given I am on the login page, obviously you'll have to be on the login page. When I enter an invalid username and password, so assuming that both the usernames and password, both of them are wrong or invalid, and I click on the login button, then I should see an error message altogether, right? So if you remember, this is similar to the steps that we usually perform in a browser scenario, right? So we manually go there, we locate the username element, we type our username, we type our password, we press on the login button, and if at all the the username and password are correct or valid, we'll be taken to the home page or the products page wherever we want to act with it, right? Similarly, if at all we give an invalid username or an invalid password, it will obviously be invalid and we should be given an error message scenario altogether, right? See, it's basic English written over here, right? So using the Gherkin language, we can write the scenarios in very, very basic English. We'll look at how we can convert this into a programmatical aspect going forward in the next session altogether, right? So on the whole, this example, the feature login functionality, then we have the user story over there, basically the scenario that we want to test, right? And as part of that, we have multiple test cases, or we call them scenarios over here, right? Successful login scenario and the unsuccessful login scenario, where we use the given, when, then, and so on and so forth to combine and write all the different kinds of actions altogether, right? Given I'm on the login page, when I enter a valid username and password, and so on and so forth, right? So this basically shows us how we can write multiple scenarios for testing a particular feature altogether. Okay, moving forward, as and when we keep using this, it will become very, very easy for you to understand them. Okay, right? So don't worry about it at all, right? So moving on, a key aspect of the Gherkin language is that each feature in the Gherkin, it corresponds to a real world example of the behavior of the system, right? So these features, they form the basis for our test cases altogether, right? So now let's look at how we can combine Cucumber with Selenium. Okay, so we have basically understood what exactly Cucumber is, what is BDD, how exactly is Gherkin language written. We saw an example given, when, then, and so on and so forth, right? Okay, so now let's look at how we can combine Cucumber with Selenium altogether, right? So you see, many organizations, they use Selenium for functional and regression testing altogether, right? So in the same lines, Selenium and Cucumber is also a very great combination when it comes to web application automation. Okay, so because on one side, Selenium provides the capability to interact with browsers, it provides the capability of automating the execution of these browser behaviors across various browser combinations altogether, right? On the other hand, Cucumber in combination with Selenium supports the behavior driven development for testing the web applications, right? So that anybody and everybody can easily understand what feature is being tested, what is the expected outcome, how are the steps being executed, and so on and so forth, right? And to top it off, the given, when, then format of Gherkin can be mapped to Selenium commands directly, which enhances our readability and maintainability, obviously, right? Okay, so till now we have understood certain key aspects, right? So one, Cucumber is widely used as an open source tool that supports behavior driven development practices, right? Gherkin is basically a simple and structured language which is used in BDD to write human readable descriptions of software behaviors. We just saw an example for that, right? And we can use them in combination with Selenium for automation testing, right? And Gherkin uses the given, when, then structure to describe the software scenarios, and it helps us outline how the application should behave in response to our specific user actions or events altogether, right? So now let's move ahead and let's set up the Cucumber project for our IDE. Okay, so for the scope of this session, we have already provided you with the initial code in the reading material, right? All you have to do is click on the link in the reading material, download the initial session code, and import it into your IDE. Okay, and next, to set up Cucumber in our IDE, we need to first install the Cucumber plugin, and then we'll set up Cucumber with Selenium altogether, right? So there are two fundamental steps that we need to follow, starting off with installing the Cucumber plugin altogether, right? So basically, this particular step involves first downloading and installing the appropriate Cucumber libraries for our programming language, which is Java, right? And for Java, this typically involves adding the Cucumber libraries to our project's build path. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's do it all together. All right, so here we are in our IDE, and as you can see, I've already imported this. All right, so basically, to import the Cucumber plugin specifically, we need to go to File, select Settings, and in the settings, we need to navigate to Plugins part, and under here, we need to go to the Marketplace, right? So File, Settings, and from the settings, we'll click on Plugins, and we'll go to Marketplace altogether, right? So in the Marketplace, we need to search for specific plugins, which is Cucumber for Java. All right, so as you can see over here, Cucumber for Java by JetBrains, we just need to click on install over here, and it says that the plugin you want to install requires another plugin called as Gherkin, which has to be installed as well. Do you want to proceed? You just need to click on yes. Okay, right. So remember, when you're using the Cucumber tool, you also need to import the Gherkin language plugin as well. Okay, right. So as you have installed it, it automatically got installed, and you should be able to see Restart IDE button over here. Okay, right. So click on Restart IDE and let's let it work. Okay, right. So let's get back. All right, so we have basically imported, what we have basically done is we have basically imported our project. We went to file, then we went to settings, and then in the plugins marketplace, as in plugins, and from there we went to the marketplace. We searched for Cucumber for Java. Okay, right. And once we found it, we basically installed the plugin along with Gherkin. Okay, remember that. And then once the plugin gets installed, it gives you a prompt, or it shows you a button asking you to restart the IDE. Okay, so we did that as well, right? So next, now that we have installed the Cucumber plugin, let's see how we can set up Cucumber with Selenium as well, right? So for that, this step will basically involve adding the necessary Selenium libraries to our project and setting up the necessary infrastructure like the WebDriver that we did earlier, right? So we need to basically import the necessary dependencies and we need to add it into our project altogether. As simple as that. Okay. And we already know that we have something called as a pom.xml, which is a configuration file, and this is where we add our project dependencies altogether, right? Okay. So as you would remember, we also have a centralized source of software artifacts called the MVN or the Maven repository, and it basically makes it easier for developers like us to manage our dependencies and build the projects altogether, right? So it's called the Maven repository or the MVN repository online. Okay, and to add the Cucumber Java dependency to the project, we just need to go to the MVN repository, search for Cucumber-Java, and then what will happen is we'll find the relevant file or relevant link. We'll look at the latest version, and then we'll copy the necessary Maven code and add it into our dependencies, right? And the code for it will look something like this. So we have dependency tags, then we have a group ID io.cucumber, and we have the version and so on and so forth, right? So let's go ahead and let's add it into our code altogether, right? Okay. Here we are in the mvnrepository.com. This is the website that we need to look into, right? And here in the search bar, we'll just simply type, Cucumber Java. Okay, so this is what you need to type. Let me just zoom out, click on search, and here, as you can see over here, the last release was pretty latest, right? So this is the one that we are looking for, Cucumber JVM: Java. Okay, right? And here, what we'll do is we'll click the latest version. Right now it's 7.13.0. Okay, and as you can see over here, under the Maven tab, we just have a small code, dependency, group ID, so on and so forth, right? We just need to copy this code part. Okay, let me just copy this, Control C, and let's go to the IDE and add it all together. All right, so basically this is the ID that we restarted. Okay, now as we already know, we just need to open this project folder. We'll just double click on the pom.xml, and as we can see over here in the dependencies tag, we need to add the copied dependency just below the Selenium, right? So you can add it above Selenium also, right? So we'll just add it, we'll click on save, and let's get back. All right, so we just basically added the necessary dependencies to our pom.xml file. We saved the file altogether, right? Next, we also need to install the Cucumber dependency for testng as well. Okay, so we'll search for the corresponding dependency in the MVN repository, right? Cucumber-testng. For this also, we'll choose the latest version. We'll go to the page, we'll copy the dependency code, right? And we'll just simply add it into our pom.xml file. And as we already know, to import the entire dependencies into our project, we'll just need to open the Maven tab and click on the refresh button so that it will get added accordingly. Okay, so let's try this out as well. All right, so here we are in the Maven repository, and let's search for Cucumber-testng. Okay, so we need to combine it with testng as well. So as you can see over here, the first one, JVM testng, this is what we need to click. We'll click on the latest version, and once the page opens, we'll just quickly copy this necessary part. Okay, so we'll just copy this part. We'll just quickly go to our IDE, and here we'll just simply paste the dependency that we have copied. If you want, you can keep this line. This is basically a comment. We need not worry about it. Okay, right? So let's just remove this part. And as you can see, we have imported the dependencies, but they have not been properly added yet to the project. Okay, so we just need to open Maven and click on refresh button, and they will get added accordingly. And once they're properly added, this red color will be gone. Okay, so let's wait for it to happen. All right, so as you can see over here, the red color is gone, which basically means we have successfully imported the necessary dependencies into our Maven project. Okay, so let's save this and let's get back to our PPT. So basically, by now, we already have a project ready to write our Cucumber with Selenium tests altogether. Okay, right. Now, so let's quickly summarize what we have understood so far. Basically, on the whole, we got a basic overview of what the behavior-driven development model is, right? And we also understood the importance of Cucumber and Gherkin language. And we also saw how exactly we can write a scenario,